when we borrow material and introduce it into our text, the Hacker and Summers text tells us that we are to use a signal phrase. Now, I'm going to show you this in two ways so that hopefully it will help you understand. Signal phrases are used to integrate source material, and here's the bulleted short version. Signal phrases serve several purposes. They prepare the reader for introduced source material. It lets the reader know, oh, there's about to be something here that came from a source other than the writer of this paper. It names the author of the source, much like you do in the first sentence of the summary. It provides a context. Who is this person? Why are they important? How are you relating it to the text that you're writing? It clarifies how the source will contribute to the paper itself. It shows the relationship between the borrowed material, the quoted material, paraphrase or summary, and the text that you are writing. It helps to establish the authority or credentials of the source. Are they an expert in the field? This is one of the places that you can provide that information. And finally, it marks boundaries between source material and the writer's own words or ideas. Again, I have a block quotation. I tell you the page numbers this comes from out of the Hacker and Summers text, and I give you the bibliographical citation below it. Notice when there are two authors, the first author's name comes in inverse order and the second in regular order. The title of the text is either italicized or underlined. This is the 7th edition of a writer's reference. The place of publication, the publisher, and the date of publication. Notice the punctuation. A period after the author's names, a period after the title of the book, unless I made a typographical error, after the edition, and a colon after the place, a comma after the publisher, and a period at the end. So there are always at least 3 periods. The signal phrase introduces source material that is borrowed, whether it is ideas, summaries or paraphrases, or exact words. So when you're writing those summaries, and in that first sentence you give the author's name and the title of the text, you're basically creating a signal phrase that says this is where this information comes from. If you were to use that in a paper, then at the end you would give the range of page numbers from which that whole summary came. So the signal phrase lets the reader know that something that is borrowed is introduced. Now, in the remainder of this paper, what I've done is given you the same information that I gave you in the bulleted points, but I use signal phrases. So let's look at those briefly. According to Hacker and Summers, authors of a writer's reference, the course handbook, the signal phrase commonly appears before the source material and usually names the author of the source and some context. This is important the first time the source is introduced. However, after the initial introduction, the author's last name may be used to introduce the material. Notice that at the end of the sentence with the quoted material, I include the page number. So the signal phrase tells me that I'm going to have borrowed material. The quotation marks tell me that I have borrowed specific material, and the page number lets me, as the reader, know where that information came from. In the next one, Hacker and Summers also indicate that a signal phrase uses a verb that is appropriate. Notice that there are examples in Hacker and Summers on page 383, and then also in introducing source material on the essay website, you find verbs that are appropriate. Let's look at those. When we go to the essay website and we see the integrating source material, again, there is information from a writer's reference as to how integrating source material helps the reader understand that borrowed material is going to follow the signal phrase. It provides the name of the author, provides a context, and marks boundaries. In addition, there are a number of resources that reference integrating sources, using quotations, using introductory tags, which would be another way of saying a signal phrase, specific links to specific universities and useful templates. All of these are places that you can go to see how to effectively integrate sources by using signal phrases. Note again that here I used signal phrases to introduce the information. Hacker and Summers note that of particular importance is the fact that the signal phrase indicates the start of a boundary between the words of a paper's author and the source's words. Notice brackets are used when things are introduced. They also state that marking the boundary with a signal phrase and a parenthetical citation, the reader knows that the borrowed source material begins with the signal phrase and ends with the parenthetical citation. Finally, the signal phrase helps connect the writer's ideas to the ideas of others, clarifying how the source will contribute to the paper. Here I have explained the source material, something that you're supposed to do. You don't just drop quotations in. You use them to illustrate a point, but then you explain the point. Source material is not only introduced and connected, interpretive comments are used to link the quoted material to your paper's argument or position. In other words, quotations cannot speak for themselves, they must be explained. Their relationship to the idea being discussed and how they contribute to the development of the idea. Finally, in Hacker and Summers in section R3C, there are specific examples that show signal phrases and quoted material, summarized material, paraphrased material. The purpose of the signal phrase is to introduce borrowed material and to establish boundaries. Notice that when the author's name is in the signal phrase, I use only the page number. Notice that in this sentence I have for examples. Their author's name is not there. I put their names here. That one might be a little iffy. Notice again, Hacker and Summers, I use a page number. Because I don't have anything intervening, I can use another page number. Again, in this new paragraph, so to speak, I've borrowed material. I have already introduced Hacker and Summers, so I don't have to introduce them again. Think of introducing a guest at a party. You don't have to reintroduce them, but I do want to credit them by using both the names of the author and the page number. Notice that there is no comma, there is no P, the period comes after the parenthesis. If their quotation ends immediately prior, then there is the closing quotation and then the page number. This is another reason why it's important when you take notes that you make notations of page numbers so you can go back and credit those easily. Let's look at R3C. This is a little easier to see in your textbook because this is on one page and then on the facing page is another. But notice they show you how to incorporate an exact sentence with no changes, a few words but not an entire sentence, where you have made some changes so that the language fits into your sentence as I did in those examples. If you're paraphrasing or summarizing. And then notice it says that you should not simply include synonyms. You either have their exact words or you put it in your own words. But whether it is summarized, paraphrased, or a direct quotation, you credit your source. Use a signal phrase to mark the beginning. Use a parenthetical citation with the page number to mark the end. There are a couple of tricks. We'll look at those. If you look at section MLA 4, it addresses documenting sources, gives you examples, and gives you not only the in-text citation, but also shows you what the works cited would look like. We'll look at the works cited a little bit later, but I want to show you 2 or 3 specific points. MLA 4A deals with in-text citations, what we're talking about. Notice that they address signal phrases and the parenthetical at the end of the sentence where borrowed material comes. They discuss what to do when the signal phrase does not name the author, as I showed you in the examples. When the author is unknown, they show that you use the title of the article, and it can be abbreviated. If you don't know the page number, then you can use the author's name in the parenthetical. With number 13, if it is an encyclopedia entry, you use, or dictionary entry, you use the name of the entry, and then a selection in an anthology, such as the text by Daly or by Clark. You would put that author's name in the parentheses and not the author or editor of the anthology, as we would treat your textbook. So the basic rules: you use a signal phrase to introduce the source. The first time the source is used, the author is named in the signal phrase. At the end of the sentence, with the citation, the quote, or the borrowed material, the page number is included in parentheses. The citation at the end of the sentence may include both the author and the page number. Once the author has been introduced, the source has been introduced. If no author is named, use the name of the article. If there is no page number, use the name of the author, and then the entries for the encyclopedia and the selection of from the anthology, as well as the visual, have particular forms that the Hacker and Summers text address. When we borrow material, we always credit it. We credit it by introducing it with a signal phrase and providing a page number. And additionally, we provide a bibliographical citation, which is what we're going to look at next.